This week's Theme Deck Tuesday is going to be taking a close look at the Stormcaller deck featuring Raikou as well as a bunch of other awesome attackers, and this deck was actually suggested to me by one of my subscribers. So if you want to see a deck, whether I've covered it or if you want me to revisit a deck, then I'm happy to do so. Just be sure to leave a comment down below, and as always, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe as I do post videos multiple times a week. So let's have a look at the contents of the deck, starting off with the Raikou here since it is on the front of the box. We have Lost Voltage, which deals a pitiful 30 damage for 2 energy on this big basic, but if we do have any lightning energy in the Lost Zone, that gets increased to a total of 120 damage, which is much more reasonable considering Raikou itself has 120 HP, so very good for knocking out other big basics or just dealing some good damage against the stage 2 Pokemon, so pretty reasonable there. But of course we have to ask ourselves, this is Theme Deck format, how are we going to get energy into the Lost Zone? And it is paired up with the Ampharos here, which its ability reads you're able to not discard, but put 2 energy from your hand into the Lost Zone, and then the defending Pokemon is paralyzed on your opponent's next turn, which is great for stalling out and giving you an extra turn of an attack. Or if you just want to attack with Ampharos itself, then the Split Bomb attack here for 2 energy allows you to deal 50 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. This is great because if you hit with Raikou for 120, then you can go in with Ampharos, deal 50 to finish the active off, and then also deal 50 to one of their bench Pokemon to set it up for a knockout on coming turns. So very good there for just building up damage quickly, and well, I wouldn't say quickly, but you know what I mean, over a couple of turns and setting up knockouts really. Or if your opponent doesn't get set up, then you can get some easy knockouts that way. And the evolutions here do also have some good attacks, like the Mareep does have a attack which paralyzes on a coin flip, and then the Flaffy can deal 40 damage, which if you're able to get this set up early, you can deal 40 to the active, then go into Ampharos and deal 50, which will finish off those stage 2 Pokemon which have 90 HP, so very good overall there. And we do also have some good supporting Pokemon to attack with as well. For example, the Naganadel here, which has a charging up ability, allowing it to put energy onto itself from the discard pile, and then the Turning Point attack deals 80 damage, but also deals an additional 80 if you have exactly 3 prize cards remaining. So that's going to be guaranteed in the Theme Deck format. Just once you've taken 3 prize cards, you go in with Naganadel and you deal 160. Definitely something to be aware of, especially on your opponent's side if they want to promote something like a big stage 2. And for the finishing off with the supporting Pokemon, we have the Zebstrika here with Sprint. If your hand gets quite low, you can discard the rest of it and then draw until you have 4 cards, or draw 4 cards, whatever you want to say. That's very good for drawing through your deck, especially if you get it down early on. And then we also have the Furfrou here to get a little bit of chip damage, but mainly keeping your hand topped up in the early game so that you can get through your deck as much as possible and get those evolutions. We'd also have a Smeargle here. I have honestly never used this Smeargle, and I would just say to avoid it because it's not going to be any use to you. Now, having a look at the supporter cards that we have here, is also some very good choices. We do have the Pokemon Fan Club, Professor Kukui, Tame Lisa, Lily, How, all of the kind of standard and classic ones that you see in this era of Theme Deck, which is very good honestly and a great selection. But we also have some great item cards here, like multiple copies of Timer Ball, Nest Ball. We even get a copy of Ultra Ball, which searches out any Pokemon that we want, which is very good. And of course, you do have to discard 2 cards, but you can just discard 2 energy or even 1 energy and something else, and then get that energy back with the Naganadel and charge up its ability, well, its attack with the ability, which is very good. And then another noteworthy card in the items is the Rescue Stretcher. You can shuffle in those attackers that you've lost through discarding, or if it's been knocked out, you can use this to get them back in any way that you need. And also the Escape Rope is very useful. Things like Agility, where your opponent is immune on the following turn when you go to attack them, then you can use this escape rope to force that Pokemon out of the active spot and hit into a different one that you can hopefully get a knockout on as well. So very useful there. Yeah, we only have one match for you today, I'm afraid, but it is extremely long and really drawn out because it is such a close game. We were losing at the start of it, but I was able to make a comeback, and that is something that you're going to see a lot with this deck. You really have to stick with it. I wouldn't say it's one for beginners. It's very much important that you have to get your sequencing correct, and yeah, just really stick with it. Make sure that you get all of the damage in that you can, draw as much as possible, get that Ampharos into play, and just try and make the best combat that you can. As you'll see in this match up against the Relentless Flame Charizard, so it's one of the best decks in the format I was able to get a game against. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know if you do or not, and yeah, let's get straight into it, see what happens. Starting off this one, I'm afraid our hand isn't looking too great, but we did get the Naganadel, which is pretty nice. So we can hopefully go into that and start dealing some decent damage. 80 isn't a huge amount, but it is going to deal with these Farfetch'd very nicely, which do have 80 HP. And then of course, if we go down to 3 prize cards, we can deal additional damage from there, taking us up to 160, which is going to be enough to deal with the Charizard if they are able to get that out by then. We'll have to see. But we are going to be taking a couple of turns here to actually get the energy attachments on, and that's perfectly fine because my opponent is just going to be drawing cards with the Farfetch'd and getting their board set up overall. As we can see, they did get the Nest Ball for a Charmander, so that's very good for them. We are just holding out hope for a supporter card on our end to get some good draws here. That's going to be the main thing. Looks like my opponent doesn't have too much going on either. Most likely just going to be ending their turn here by drawing with the Farfetch'd. And there we go, there is the Farfetch'd, drawing them some cards. Going into our turn, we do get a Pokemon that we can put down here. Could also put the Naganadel down, but I could also just hold on to it because there's no rush to put it down, and it wouldn't make a difference putting it down either way. So we'll just keep the Poipole in play, we'll use the attack to look at our prizes, and we can see that we have a couple of supporter cards in the prizes, which is a little unfortunate, so just keeping in mind whereabouts in the prizes those actually are, so we can go ahead and take those when we do get a knockout on this following turn. My opponent gets the Charmander, so it's going to be a little sketchy because if we get a knockout on the following turn with Naganadel, my opponent could potentially have the Charizard, which is going to get them a return knockout, and from there we won't have a backup attacker. So we might even need to go in with a different Pokemon and start stalling, and just kind of hope for the best, see what draws we get, and that way we can build up our attackers, because this isn't looking too good right here. My opponent just opting to draw some cards again with the Farfetch'd. We do get a Nest Ball off the top of the deck. So let's have a look here, see what we can get. I think we could go for the Furfrou actually to draw some cards. That would be useful. And also getting the Mareep down would be very good as well. But I think Furfrou is going to be better overall. So we'll go with that. We can retreat into it, just like so. And then evolve into the Naganadel. And then use that charging up ability to get the energy right back on there, so it's like we never even retreated. And we can attach to the Furfrou, hitting my opponent for 20, definitely not the knockout that we were aiming for with Naganadel, but since they do have that Charmander, we want to be able to set up our board, and using the Furfrou to draw some cards is a perfect way to do that right here. We do get into another Nest Ball, so that's going to get us the Mareep on this following turn. Unfortunately, we get a third Poipole. Would have really loved another Naganadel there. That would have been good. And there we go. My opponent did get the Charizard down, so definitely a good play not taking the knockout on the Farfetch'd, as they would have returned, knocked us out, and we would have been stuck. My opponent could have completely wiped through our board, as we don't have any other attackers. But it looks like they are going to be doing that anyway, going in with the Charizard and start getting some knockouts on our Pokemon. perfectly fine by me, as we do have the Naganadel we can do some damage with at least, or potentially just, again, stall with some of our Pokemon. We have the extra Poipole, so maybe we throw up the one that's on our bench and stall for a turn here. We'll have to see what my opponent goes for, if they do choose to take the knockout or not. They are just going to be passing it over for some reason. I mean, they could have used the ability on the Charizard, got that Roaring Resolve off, and got a knockout, but for whatever reason they've chosen not to do that, and that's going to give us an extra turn to get a Mareep into play. We can also attach to it, and again, we're not going to be drawing a huge amount, but drawing that one card could be useful here, assuming, of course, it is a good one. Yeah, that's not great. I was definitely hoping for a supporter card there, but instead we just get a Flaffy that we can evolve into on this following turn. My opponent going for a Cynthia. Would have loved one of those on our turn, but it's just not to be. Instead, we're going to have to keep hitting into our opponent as much as we can with some of our alternate attackers. They do finally get ahead on that timer ball, since the first one that they played failed both times, but they do get one evolution Pokemon here. Most likely going to be building up that Nidoqueen line, as that's really crucial for getting the consistency of their deck up and running. We'll have to see if that's what they go for. It is indeed. My hunch was correct. That is typically what people go for. I've just played against this matchup so many times, you can predict exactly what cards people are going to be taking based on their board here. And they are going to be attaching the energy and getting the knockout this time around. We could put up our Naganadel like I said, but I don't really want to risk it getting knocked out, because it almost certainly will be knocked out. So instead I'll put up a Poipole so that we can stall for a turn. We can put down another Poipole from our hand. We'll evolve the bench. We've got the charging up ability that we can use to get energy onto the Naganadel here. And we can also attach an energy from our hand. Let's put one onto the benched Poipole before passing it over to our opponent. They do have this Charizard with Roaring Resolve, so they can continuously get the energy onto it and keep attacking us if they want to do that. Although that will be bringing its HP down quite a bit if they go that route. They're going to be evolving here as well onto the Rapidash, which is a good move. So that's a very good attacker to be using with the agility, potentially being invincible when they flip a head. But we see they are going for that Roaring Resolve now, taking a step back from that mistake they made 2 turns ago and just passing to us, so they are now fully committed to the Roaring Resolve and getting as many knockouts as they can. I think we could go potentially in with our Ampharos here, since we do have the Ampharos, and deal some damage to soften some stuff up, I suppose. Other option is going in with Naganadel. That would take them down to 30 HP remaining. That seems reasonable to me, so we'll go in with Naganadel. And we top deck an energy, so we could actually Lost Zone these and paralyze my opponent, which could be good as well, give us an extra turn. The only downside is we're not going to have a huge amount of cards in our hand to work with from there. So I think we'll just attach the energy instead. We'll put one onto the Ampharos, and we can just hit into our opponent, dealing 80 damage here, put them on 30, and when it comes into our turn again, my opponent is most likely going to be knocking us out here, but we can go in with Ampharos, deal the 50 to the active for the knockout, and also deal 50 onto one of their benched Pokemon to start weakening things up a bit. That's going to be our game plan here. We have the energy, we can start building up some other attackers, and just hopefully we draw out of this horrible hand that we've got going on here. Even top decking a Timer Ball would get us into a Zebstrika. The Zebstrika itself, of course, would allow us to draw cards. So we do have a lot of outs, but really I think just drawing into all of the energy is going to be our downside. And my opponent taking another prize card yet again, going ahead in the prize race. Like I said, we're going to be promoting the Ampharos. We top deck another energy, like I said, it's almost as if I called it. And I am going to have to be attaching this because I do want to be getting a couple of energy attachments to keep up with my opponent, so I'll put one onto the Raikou, and we're going to be getting the knockout anyway, so there's no point in paralysing my opponent. Definitely putting one onto the active, like I said, and I think we also want one on the Charmander, so that we can try and take that out in this coming turn after my opponent has attacked us inevitably. So we do get a prize card here. I'm going to go for this one. Oh, apparently that's not the one that I was looking for, that's a Blitzel. I remember that there was supporters in there, but I guess it was on the right was the Lily. I just remember the Lily being on the bottom there. So that's my mistake. Definitely a little unfortunate I didn't put the supporter there out of the prizes, because that would have been really, really useful. My opponent does have a Pokemon fan club, so they're searching out some basics here, or just the one, and they also have the Nidoqueen in the back so they can get an evolution Pokemon. Most likely a Charmeleon. If it's in the deck, it could potentially be prized, of course, but they are going to be using that Queen's Call ability right now, so we can find out in a matter of moments what it is, and that is correct, it is the Charmeleon. I'm not worried about that though, since we are dealing 50 damage onto two of our opponent's Pokemon. We can do that onto the Charmeleon and get the knockout before it evolves into a Charizard, and that's where this deck starts to really shine, because you're sniping those basics and stage 1 Pokemon, and even though my opponent got ahead and they're going to be invincible to attacks, that's alright because we can snipe their bench. So let's attach one of these energies somewhere. I think just putting it onto the Raikou is fine, I suppose. I mean, the other option is actually paralysing here. That doesn't seem terrible. It means that my opponent's not going to be attacking us again, unless they have a switch. And they don't have a good attacker. If they do have a switch, they would have to retreat back into the Rapidash. So I am actually going to go for the paralysis here, and hope that my opponent doesn't have a way to get out of this. And then, like I said, we can go for the attack, dealing 50 to Charmeleon, and I think we'll also do 50 to the Nidoqueen. That's the other big threat here. So I want to do a little bit of damage, but in case it comes up and starts attacking us, then it'll be a lot easier to knock out with something like a Raikou. I do choose the correct prize card this time as well, getting a Lily off the prizes so that we can get a good amount of draw. I mean, none of the supporter cards that were in our prizes is going to give us a huge amount of draw anyways, but I figured Lily is going to be the best one, since if we top deck something that we can play, then Lily is going to give us a total of 4 cards, which is the most here. I mean, there was a copycat in there as well, but I don't really want to be drawing back into these cards. I'd rather just draw some good ones, hopefully get into a Zebstrika, and then we'll be in an excellent position. We've seen my opponent using a Brock's Grit there, so they're just resetting their deck a little bit, putting some of the Charizard line back in there so that they have that to work with, and they can search out with the Nidoqueen, of course. They're going to be attaching onto the Farfetch, so there we go, they do have the switch. Will they be retreating back into Rapidash, or are they just going to be building up their hand and drawing cards? Either one is a perfectly reasonable option. And of course, they don't want to forget the Queen's Call, searching out a Pokemon from the deck, but they did put down the Ponyta there, so they're definitely not going to be getting the Charizard lineup anytime soon unless we take knockouts on their Pokemon. And they are also building up a second Nidoqueen. So this is all perfectly fine by me, as they're just taking a bit of a backseat so that they can draw some cards here. We top deck a Lady, which is great for getting energy, but if we do that, we're not going to be able to play our Lily. So I'll go for the Lily first, draw 3 cards. We do get a Zebstrika as well as a couple of energy. I could potentially use the Zebstrika, but I mean, using the Lily, the Lady to get energy, that could be good too. But I think we just have to be aggressive here. I really want a Naganadel down, as well as a second Mareep. That would be great. So I'm going to use the Sprint to discard our hand, and that is really unfortunate. We're drawn to 3 energy, and not a huge amount else. I could use the Rescue Stretcher to get back in Naganadel, but I would much rather just hold on to that where I can shuffle in 3 Pokemon that are going to be more beneficial to us. We could also paralyze here again, which could be good, as that's going to slow our opponent down quite a bit if we go for that route. And I think that is what I'm going to go for here. I do like that quite a bit. So I'm going to paralyze, Lost Zone, 2 more energy, and we can once again snipe some damage onto our opponent. Let's see how much HP the Ponyta has. Has 70, which is quite a reasonable amount. We could put some onto the Nidoqueen again, I suppose. That would take it down to 60 HP remaining, which isn't a huge amount either. And we could put it on, I think I'll actually put one over here, and we'll put one onto, sure, we'll put it onto the Nidoqueen, why not? We'll go with that. See what my opponent has on this following turn. We could potentially get a knockout on the Nidorino here, or yeah, Nidorina, whatever, the purple thing that evolves into Nidoqueen. You know what one I mean. We could take a knockout in that if they don't evolve into another Nidoqueen, or we could potentially just start hitting into some of the other Pokemon, start softening those up a bit as well. And since the Farfetch'd is in the active, we can also hit it for weakness. So we could potentially do that to take a easy prize card here and soften something else up on the bench. There is that second Nidoqueen, so we're not going to be able to get a knockout on that, but we have softened it up for something like our Raikou to come in and easily knock out if they want to promote that and attack with it. Also just great because, like I said, their bench is full right now, so they're not able to work towards a Charizard, which is a big sweeping attacker, as we saw earlier on. They're going to go for a Pokemon Fan Club, most likely getting out those Charmanders that they shuffled in, as I'm pretty sure that's the only basics that they have at this point. They do have another Ponyta though, so they're going to grab the Ponyta and Charmander, and we should be able to catch up with my opponent in the prize race here, since we have been able to stabilize. And yeah, I mean, we have the Zebstrika. I could use that to draw some cards on this following turn if we don't get a supporter. The only issue is we are going to be losing a Rescue Stretcher, but we do have a Naganadel and the Flaffy actually, so we could shuffle in some of these Pokemon. Just a little unfortunate that we're going to be losing the Rescue Stretcher without making use of it to its fullest potential, really. Let's see, my opponent is going to be attaching onto the Nidoqueen and passing it over to us. So we'll go and attach an energy somewhere. I think most likely just onto the Poipole is fine. We'll go for the Rescue Stretcher play, shuffle in the Flaffy, we'll get the Naganadel, and we have one more in the deck, so I think we'll get a Poipole as well. That seems fine. Shuffle those in. Oh, that's a new animation. I've not seen that before. Must have been a recent update, I guess. And we'll go for a sprint. Discard this one energy that we have and draw 4 cards. That is a very nice draw since we do have supporters here. Let's go for the How, since it's going to draw some more cards. And this is kind of horrible. We have a timer ball at least that we can play out. Let's see if we get any evolutions. We do get the 1. That's going to grab us the Naganadel, which is perfect. Exactly what we're looking for here. And we can use the charging up to get energy back into the board state here and get the Naganadel ready to attack. And I don't really want to be using the paralysis right now. I mean, you could, but I want to be taking a knockout on this Farfetch'd so that we get an extra prize. So I'm just going to go for the attack, go for the Farfetch'd, and then we also want to deal some damage somewhere else. I think just dealing it to the Rapidash is fine, honestly. It's that or a Nidoqueen, so I guess we could do the Nidoqueen as well. Put them both up to 100, so we'll go with that. Make them both very easy targets to knock out. Like I said, with weakness, that Farfetch'd is going to go down nice and easily, and we can take another prize card here. I'm not too worried about taking the supporter cards out, since we do already have a couple in our hand, and we have the Zebstrika now, so not too worried about getting those supporters right now. My opponent promoted the Rapidash, and they're going for a Queen's Call. they're going to go for the double Queen's Call, I can tell you right now. And they did get down that Charmander as well. Now, I did take the escape rope off of the prizes just because it is some nice utility. Could be good for taking an easy prize card somewhere, or just if we get into a sticky situation, then could be useful. But like I said, we have softened up a lot of our opponent's board. Hopefully they don't get a head on this agility. That would be perfect, because then we can go in with our Raikou and get a knockout on the Rapidash. That's going to be putting us in a good position overall, but certainly them building up another Charizard here could be problematic. And yeah, there we go, my opponent gets another head from agility, so this is where the escape rope is going to be useful, so that we can get an attack off on one of my opponent's other Pokemon. And I think, I'm not quite sure where we want to attach the energy just yet. I think we'll go for the escape rope first and see what my opponent does from here, and we can take it as it comes. We do have our Ampharos still able to snipe, so I think we want to hold off on losing our Ampharos, just in case we want to get a couple of cheeky knockouts here and there. My opponent having a long think about what it is that they want to promote, because anything that they promote into the active spot is going to get knocked out by us, since our Raikou is dealing 120 damage. They are just going to be promoting the Farfetch'd, which makes the perfect sense here. I'll go into the Naganadel, since it can easily retreat, and let's go ahead and just draw 2 cards here with our Kahili. We do get some reasonable ones, and we even get the head, so we get the Kahili back. Let's go for the Timer Ball, just thinning the deck at this point, but I guess not, because we're going to get double tails. We do also have the extra Raikou, which is a really nice pickup here, as we can get an energy onto there. I don't want to be paralyzing, since I want to be attaching these energies for an attack. And I think we're just going to be getting a knockout with the Raikou here that we already had, as it makes the most sense, as I really want to protect the Ampharos until we need it again. So let's retreat the Naganadel. We've got that charging up, so we always have energy on it, and we'll go for the attack, doing far more damage than we need to on this Farfetch'd, but that's alright. So I'll take the top left. Is that the Kukui, or is it in the middle? Oh man, I've forgotten. My bad, but there we go. It's an energy switch, definitely not the supporter card. I knew I should have just gone with my gut, and it was in the top left is the Professor Kukui, I'm pretty sure. Not that we're going to need it, but you never know, that extra damage could be useful at some point. My opponent evolved into the Charmeleon there. They also put down another Ponyta, so they're really going in hard with these Rapidash, trying to get the most out of the agility. And they are only dealing 60 with it, so there we go. If we finally get a Tails on that, we're going to be able to take advantage of it and get a knockout with our Raikou. I'm not too worried about getting another Ampharos down at this point, so I'm just going to be putting a Poipole down so we can get second Naganadel ready, and we can also get an attachment onto our Raikou. And actually using that charging up, it is going to be great here with the energy switch. We can switch that energy over to our Poipole, so it's near enough ready to go. And I mean, Kahili's fine. I guess we could hold off on the Tatanlees in case we need to switch for whatever reason. So we'll just draw 2, and we get another heads, which is awesome. We did also draw into the Ampharos pieces that are still in the deck, so if we do want to get a second Ampharos up, we can do that. And there we go, we take another prize card. We were losing this match fairly quickly at the start of this, but we've been able to slowly build up our board and swing it back into our favour, as my opponent still has 3 prize cards remaining, while we only have 1 left to take. So it shouldn't be too difficult. Sure, they are going to be taking a couple of prize cards here, but it's going to be perfectly fine, as we have the firepower that we need in order to close out this game. My opponent going for a second Brock's Grit, try and get some more Pokemon and energy back into the deck and get those set up so that they can start attacking us over and over again. But just the damage output that they have right now with the agilities hasn't been serving them the way that they need it. and we're going to be in a perfect situation to close out this game. This is pretty typical of the Stormcaller deck, to be honest. You're going to have long games, you're going to have games where you really have to stick it out and hope that you get into some good draws. And I would say that it's honestly not a beginner's deck. You really have to know where you want to be putting your energy and what supporters to use when, things like that. All of the sequencing of this deck has to be spot on so that you can get plays like this and be able to make comebacks against your opponent, because once you do make that comeback, there's no way that your opponent should be able to beat you. This is still going to be close though, so we'll have to see what we can do. We do have the one prize card remaining. I think if we go in with our Ampharos, we could soften up this Charizard as well as something else, or just hit into a Nidoqueen again potentially. But I think we could go in with our Raikou, deal that substantial amount of damage, and we should be good from here. So let's go in with that. We have our Ampharos line that we can start putting down. And of course we do have the Professor Kukuis, so that can help us out as well. That's actually perfect, because then if we deal 140 to our opponent, they won't be able to use Roaring Resolve, because they will have to be knocking themselves out if they want to use that. So that's actually perfect for us. We'll go with the Kukui right here. We get to draw 2 cards, neither of them particularly useful, but we can attach energy, and sure, we'll use Charging Up, why not? No real reason not to, just in case we need a retreating option. And with nothing else left to play, we're going to hit our opponent for 140 damage. Not quite the knockout, 10 damage short, but it is going to be stopping them from getting another prize card here. They're going to be forced to get something like a switch, but even then they would need the energy to go into the Nidoqueen, but I guess they've just gave up, or they haven't realised that they would be knocking themselves out, because they even get the energy there. But there we go, they knocked themselves out, gave us that last prize card for free, and we are going to be closing out that game against one of the top decks in the theme deck format, which is that Charizard deck. So very awesome game, very close in terms of the comeback that we had there, but like I said, very typical with the Stormcaller deck. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. That was quite a long match, so I'm going to close it off here, and I'll see you in the next one.